Okay.
Spitsbergen.
Very good.
Not bad.
And this is actually quite interesting because we are here in Russia. And as a fact, do you know that Norwegians and the Russians do sort of live together on this Arctic island of Spitsbergen? Yes.
It's half the way to the North Pole from Norway. From Norway, half the way to the North Pole.
Yes.
You'll find this island called Svalbard, Spitsbergen.
Yes.
And there we have Barentsburg, Russian area. 600 people live there permanently, doing coal mining. It was established in 1927.
And we have this city of Pyramid, which is actually named after the mountain you can see in the back of the pictures. And they also did coal mining for many years, but now it's no people living there. And you can see the statue, and it's the buildings and everything are very Russian. So
This is the northernmost permanent settlement in the world.
Sorry, it's very, very Soviet.
yes,
Very
it's very
Soviet.
nice.
Yeah.
But it's the
And-
northernmost settlement in the world.
Yeah. And again, the Norwegians and the Russians are living side by side on this island. And it's a sort of a tribute to Russia because we're neighbors, and that is something that the Norwegians are very proud about, having the Russians on this island. So that was a short introduction for ourselves.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit about us. Who are we? And the title for the presentation is Subject-Oriented Teacher Professional Development. So it very much hangs together with what has been said before, with your presentation and with your presentation and the topic on teachers' professional development. I'm Tony Burner. I finished my PhD last year on assessment. And I used chat, cultural historical activity theory, to analyze contradictions in students, Fernando, students, and teachers, both practices and perceptions of formative assessment in English classrooms in Norway. My subjects are Norwegian, English, and history, and I've taught in high schools before I started in teacher education, where I work now, educating tomorrow's English teachers.
Yes. And I'm Bodil Svendsen. I'm at another university actually in Norway. Tony is in the south of Norway and I'm in the middle, up north sort of, in Norway. It's the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. And I've been teaching there for about 7 years. And I also have 16 years in the public school, in high school, teaching biology, natural science, and geography. So that's where I come from. So I am a science teacher, educator. I'm not a psychologist. That's very important. So this is, now we have the basics, who we are.
Yeah. And when we did our PhDs,
Yes,
you're submitting soon?
I'm submitting very soon, this August.
Yeah.
And my PhD projects have been about inquiries into teacher professional development. And it's the basics in my PhD work have been about teachers doing inquiry-based science teaching in classroom. And the project that me and Tony have together actually have been created from the empirical findings from both of our PhD projects. Because we discovered something by doing our PhD, that there was a gap somewhere. We will come back to that gap, what that was about.
Yeah, so right now we have started on a new joint project, Bodil and I, which is about subject-oriented teacher professional development. So we're writing an article, and this is just a draft and just some ideas. We will be happy for some feedback from particularly psychological research point of view.
Yes. And something that we discovered by doing our PhDs, because obviously we have been doing a lot of reading about teacher professional development, and we sort of found that a lot of literature use a lot of time describing how teachers can be better, and the descriptions are often very instructional, and they are describing the current situation and where we want to go in the future. And very few look back, asking questions about the past. What's the history, both of the subject and what's the history of teachers' teaching culture at their school or in how? So this is we think this is a major problem when dealing with professional development of teachers.
And most research on TPD has been about, as you say, instructions, but also methods. What do teachers do in classrooms? How to improve activities of learning and teaching. And not so much related to subject-specific contexts. TPD in English is somewhat different from TPD in natural science.
Yes.
That is actually our problem here, the gap we would like to contribute a little bit to.
Yes.
Is subject-oriented TPD, to focus on that, because it has been a lack in previous research.
So the problem is when you are working with teachers with, for example, scientific concepts, if they do not have the same view on what this is, because they have not even been thinking about what this is, has been in the past, it will most probably be, the result of that will most probably be that, okay, they do something, some stakeholders come to from the university, the school, doing something, yeah, that's a good idea. And when they sort of go back to their universities, well, that was a fun thing, but okay, now we go back to our teaching. So nothing changes, right? Because they haven't put their mind into it. They haven't understood why they should do this, and they don't even have the same understanding of the concepts they are doing in their subject. So this is a major problem, and we find that the literature have not been taking care of this. It's a missing link.
So, yeah, our claim is that TPD does not occur in a vacuum, but it occurs in a specific subject, right? That is the claim. And to argue for that claim, we use Vygotskian concepts. One of the concepts we use is historicity.
Yes. And as I said earlier, it's important for the teachers to really know. Of course, they need to know their subject, but they also need to know the ideas of the subject in the past and the ideas of the subject at their school. So why do they do this? Because if you question a teacher about, yeah, but why do you teach this? Very often they would say, well, because we do that. That's the way we do it here, you know. And that's the only explanation they have.
Or they refer to the
seem
curriculum.
to forget the students, you know. So
Yeah, or they refer to the curriculum, right?
yes.
But the curriculum isn't necessarily a legitimization of the subject. It's yeah.
Institutional.
Yes, and it doesn't really make you a good teacher, even though if you know that your curriculum, you have to know the subject well as well. Because if you want to teach, if a student asks me about some scientific concepts, I need to be able to explain this concept in many ways. And I need to be trained at that. So,
Why do you want to teach Norwegian students English, for example? Right? What is the history of English in Norway? How has English been taught from the beginning until now? What's the point? So legitimization of the subject. Why has it been taught? How has it been taught? And also in the local situation. At that school, in that classroom. Why do you want to teach English to these students in this classroom? That is what we call subject-oriented historicity. The second concept is subject-oriented mediation. Take an example from my own PhD, assessment, student assessment. Is formative assessment a concept you are familiar with? Psychologists, formative assessment, yeah? Assessment that promotes learning in the classroom, yeah? Formative assessment in English, for example, is pretty different from formative assessment in science education. Formative assessment in English, then the teachers have to have a concept of, for example, written feedback on students' products, and through that concept, written feedback on students' products, on student assessment, we think that then, if you have the teacher here, then you have the written feedback here, then you have learning here. Written feedback with a mediation here. You can do that with all smaller concepts within a larger concept. For example, written feedback within a larger concept, assessment. That is one example.
Yeah. Another one is we use science. In my PhD, I worked with a specific model. The science teachers know about that. It's the 5E model from BIB from 2006. And when introducing the model to the teachers that I was studying, they didn't quite understand the concept of it. And when I started looking at why they didn't understand the concept of it, it came back to because they didn't understand the science concept that they were going to use to go along with this model. So, so we had to actually redesign the model together with the teachers in order to get them to understand actually concepts that should be understood from before. And in order to do that, we had to look to the past. We have to look at the history of the subject. So that was quite interesting.
So what we have thought to do in our article is, for example, in this section, subject-oriented mediation, that we give such concrete examples from natural science and English. And then the third and last concept is subject-oriented internalization.
Yes.
That is a concept, that is the one that we haven't worked so much with yet. So we would like to have some feedback on that. But the idea is that when you work with your subject in TPD, you will have to do it collectively in a subject group before you try things out in your classroom. First social, and then individual, and then social again with your students.
Yes, and that is, of course, in order to get this subject-oriented internalization to be part of the teaching culture of the school, because they need to develop it together and need to understand why this is important to work with, but together.
Yeah, now we have spent 12 minutes. We are within our frame of 15 minutes. So we are open to comments and feedback, so we can work more on the ideas here.
Here.
Thanks.
Wow.